Okay, so this is statics. Um, After I go through the syllabus and D2L, I'll talk a little bit about what statics is, um, what part of the engineering world we're going to be talking about here. Um, Everything that you need for this class, like all the assignments, um, uh, any information about exams, any information I want to give you is going to be given on D2L. So to get into the D2L site, go to the normandale.edu page. Oh, can you see that all right? I didn't turn off a light over here, but is that bright enough? Um, so if you go to the main Normandale page, go to the drop-down menu, current students, and then D2L is one of those. Um, and when you get logged into D2L, it'll look something like this, and you can choose the class. This is static, so we want this one. And the first thing you'll see when you get into D2L is this announcements page. This you should get used to checking about every day. Um, I'll give you the assignments here. Any information about exams that I need you to know uh, will be here. Any reminders I want to give you. So just every day, come to this page and make sure that there's, see if there's anything new for you. Um, and then once we start turning in assignments and stuff, you'll be able to check grades here. You'll submit your assignments here. But what I want to talk about now is under content. This is where I have the syllabus. Um, and if you go to content, there's all this stuff loaded. Um, if you want to like read ahead, get a sense for what kind of topics we're going to go into, you can go down here to old lecture notes. And, if I just pick some random day, you can see this is what we talked about that day. You can get a sense, just skimming through this, you can get a sense of what kind of topics we're going to be going into. Also, something I have for statics that I don't have for any other class, and I think this could be really useful, is I have a pretty detailed um, like sort of textbook document for statics uh, that I wrote during one of my sabbaticals. And the thing is, particularly statics, dynamics, and deform, I teach in a pretty different way than the popular textbooks do. Um, and so, in all my classes, uh, I don't have you go off a textbook. I have you go off of the lectures I give. But in statics, I happen to have kind of like a textbook that you can use that teaches that goes through it in exactly the same way I do in class. So like if you go uh, to any one of these topics, you can just see, you know, sort of a more detailed sort of textbook like format for these topics. So anytime you want a little more information about uh, any of the topics I'm going through, go to this statics text and you can find that topic on here. Um, the assignments I give you are going to be here. Uh, Solutions to a bunch of the assignments, we'll talk about that as we go through the syllabus, will be here. But what I want right now is the syllabus. Um, also vector review. This is an assignment that I'm going to give you, not the whole thing, but um, uh, you'll be asked to read this vector review and do some of the problems after class today. So that's also under course information here. But we want the syllabus right now. So I'll go here and full screen. Okay, so this class is statics. It's a 3-credit class. And the first thing I want to talk about is the expected time commitment. If you look up, this isn't just for engineering, it isn't just for Normandale. If you look up how many hours of should I spend outside of class for every hour in class, for a college class generally, you'll get the same answer no matter what university website you find it on, Ole Miss University, Harvard University, Normandale. It's all the same answer. You should spend between 2 and 3 hours outside of class for every hour in class. And so if we take the lower end of that, 2 hours, this is a 3-credit class, so we have 3 hours of lecture a week. And so on top of that, you should spend at least 6 hours outside of class working on assignments, reading through the notes, making lists of topics or whatever. You should be spending at least 6 hours outside of class every week putting this stuff in your brain. My voice is always so out of practice the first day of the fall. I always get like a totally sore throat this week. And so I would recommend, go to your calendar and look and just make sure that you can find the time in your week to put in that kind of time. I mean, let's say it's a 9 to 12 hour total time commitment for this class. And if you can fit it in and you're ready to do it, I think you'll have a really good experience in this class. But if you can't fit it in, it probably just isn't the semester for you to take this class. Okay. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about it who wants to talk about it. My name is Guy Olakin. I have a master's in biomedical engineering and a PhD in engineering mechanics. And statics, deform, and dynamics are right in the middle of engineering mechanics. So these are sort of introductory classes for the stuff that I have my PhD in. Please just call me Gaio. My office is S1311. So it's on the first floor on that physics hallway. You can email me or call me. The best way to get a hold of me is through the D2L Instant Messenger. So if you go to D2L, this is the Instant Messenger. And if you go up here, Instant Messages, and you can send messages from here. Let's see. So if you click on the class list, it should give you, hopefully, a list that has me as one of those people, and then you can send a message from there. And then once you've sent one message, you can just go to that and reply or whatever. It's pretty easy to use. The class is Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 11 to, this is wrong. It's not from 11 to 1:50. It's from 11 to 11:50. It's a 50-minute class. My office hours are, I always do my office hours in the tutoring center rather than in my office so that there's places for people to sit if there's multiple people there. So this is the room number of the tutoring center. And it's 1 to 3 on Tuesdays and Thursdays and 1 to 2 on Fridays. And if those are hard for you to get to, contact me and I can meet with you on Zoom or in person outside of those times too. But I'm always going to be in the tutoring center at those times. And if you can fit it into your schedule, I would highly recommend getting in the habit of spending, 1 or more of these office hours in the tutoring center every week, just working on your homework problems. There'll hopefully be other students from the class there you can work with. I'll be in there and you can ask me questions. So it's just a really nice resource. Think of it as like study hall or whatever. Just come in and do your work. Um, if if I had a distribution of the grades of the students this is my 19th, starting my 19th year here, uh, the grades of all the people who made it a habit to come in and do their work at my office hours versus just the average overall students in the classes, there's a huge difference in the grades. It makes a big, big difference, it seems like, for the people who do that. Well, correlation is not causation, but I think it does make, it might not make all of that difference in grades, but I think it makes a pretty big difference in your understanding of the class. The final for this class is scheduled for Friday, December 18th, the last day of finals week, from 2 to 4. So that makes it the very last final during finals week. As I said, in thermo, the thermo final is scheduled right before this, and nobody should have to take finals back to back like that. So if you're in both of these classes, let me know when we get a little closer to finals, and we'll find another time that you can take one of these two. Also, I mean, really, if anybody wants to take a final at a different time, we can probably work it out. So just come talk to me. But this is the sort of default nominal finals period. There are no textbooks required for this class. If you're looking for a textbook for future reference, these are two good ones. I wouldn't use either one of them during this class, though. For this class, I would just go based on what I say and then what's available in that document, that textbook document I pointed out. These books emphasize certain things. I emphasize certain things. I'm not saying my way is better, but I am saying my way is much more geared towards the stuff that I'm going to put on my tests, So don't listen to them, listen to me. I do love Sham's outlines, and they cost about $25 each. So I would always recommend, once you finish a class, getting a Sham's outline for it. Yes? No, I would not say so. They're all pretty much the same. It changes the numbering of some problems and stuff. I would get an earlier one because it's cheaper. Yeah. Any other questions yet so far? Yes. Yes, good question. So if you go to, so yeah, let me show you once I get going, I'm gonna be the same way I would lecture on a whiteboard. I'm gonna be lecturing on a tablet, and all of that is gonna be recorded, and I'll put it all up here on D2L. So let's just go to some random day from this. If you go to an old lecture, so yeah, you'll be able to watch the whole lecture on video. If you miss a class, or if you just want to go back and see something again or whatever, it'll always be available. So I have a 2-hour class after this one on Mondays. I guess only on Mondays. But so anyways, just be a little patient. It might not be up right after class, but by the sort of early afternoon, those videos and those notes will be posted. Any other questions? Okay. Course objectives, topics to be covered. I'll go into this a little more once we finish. with the syllabus. The grading scale is pretty much going to be 90, 80, 70, 60. It's possible that I'll relax those a little bit depending on how test scores come out or something like that, but it won't go any higher than that. And most of the time I don't have to relax it. So as grades come in for assignments and stuff, if you assume 90, 80, 70, 60 for the grade cutoffs, it'll give you a very good sense of where your grade stands in the class. And these grade percentages will be broken down into these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories. So I just want to go through these categories, describe them one by one. So from least valuable to most valuable, there's this professionalism, professionalism, consistency, and appropriateness, lecture quizzes, daily assignments, weekly assignments, and then exams. So the first one, worth 5% of your grade, is professionalism, consistency, and appropriateness. And, basically, an engineering degree is a professional degree. It's sort of it's kind of this funny straddling of like a liberal arts academic degree and sort of a really professional vocational degree. But right out of your undergraduate education, you'll be getting jobs where you're working in a professional environment and people will be looking to you for important information. And I just want to, do my part to encouraging you to communicate clearly and professionally, be dependable, punctual, all those kind of things. And so this first category, 5% of your grade, is just based on attendance. And if you're absent, letting me know why, being clear ahead of time, what I can expect if you're going to miss something, whatever. Getting things in on time, doing work that's legible and understandable. All of those things are part of being a professional. And now is the time to start practicing that stuff. Wearing a suit. No, not really. You don't have to wear a suit, but all the other stuff. I'll imagine you're wearing professional clothes, but everything else, you need to get in the habit of doing this. So another part of that is sort of being considerate with my time, I'm always happy to reschedule an exam if you have an issue, but if the issue is just you want to do everything on your schedule and not on our schedule, that can be a pain, So kind of in rescheduling exams, is there a reason to do it? If there is, I'm happy to do it. If it seems like every exam you're coming to me and asking if you can take it later in the afternoon because you just rather or whatever, I don't like that. And I'm not the only one. Reasonable lobbying for grades, I'm happy to, if I made a mistake grading an exam or something, I want to get it right, but if that can sort of turn the corner into like, you only gave me 3 out of 6 on this problem, and I think it should be 4 out of 6. Can I, if every single exam we're having that conversation, I don't think that's a good habit to get into. Also, I said this exact same thing in thermodynamics, but I love for people to ask questions. I think almost always, if you have questions, somebody else has the same question and it can clarify it for other people. But, sometimes I've had classes where one person starts dominating the discussion of the class to the point that it kind of disrupts the flow of the class. And so, for most people, you'll never have to think about this. But if you are talking in class more than everybody else in the class combined, you should probably ask yourself, is this affecting the flow of this class? Is this affecting the pacing of this class? Okay, any questions about that category? So all these things, but it's only 5% of your grade, and most people in the class will just get 5% on that, but for the people who don't get 5% on that, it's meant to be like a nudging in what I consider to be the right direction, and if you don't get a 5 on that, I'll always give as detailed the notes as I can about what I think, could have been different. Okay, also 5% of your grade is lecture quizzes. The thermodynamics quizzes are going to be on Mondays. The statics quizzes are going to be on Fridays. Not every Friday, but often. And it's just going to be a short 10-minute quiz at the end of Friday classes. It's going to be short answer questions asking you to remember things I said in class, or a short answer about something that I consider to be a key point. Okay. Sometimes those are mathematical definitions, like what's the definition of the row vector in calculating moments, something like that. There's not going to be calculations on the lecture quizzes. It's just going to be short answer. That makes it different from the exams. The exams are going to be nothing but calculations, like the kind of calculations you do in the problems that I assign. And one important thing about the quizzes and the exams is they're always cumulative. So it's not just since the last quiz or the last exam. You always need to be going back to the beginning and refreshing your memory on the older material too. It's a pain during the semester, but it makes the final much more pleasant, because I used to hate that feeling of like having to go back and like I haven't thought about this stuff in forever. And well, I'm going to try to, in my assignments and in everything, emphasize just steadily doing that little by little over the whole course of the semester. Then daily assignments are worth 10% of your grade. Most of or maybe half, maybe a little more than half of the assignments of the problems I assign daily, I will give you full solutions to. And these are sort of, the idea is that you're just sort of self-checking those. And if you don't know how to do a problem, or you're not sure if you did it right, and it's one that I didn't give you a solution to, it's kind of your responsibility to ask me about it in class or in office hours and make sure that you're thinking about it right, because you're responsible for being able to do, knowing the steps for doing these daily assigned problems. Also, these daily problems are the one place in this class where you can use AI. That's fine with me. So if, feel free to ask AI any questions about these, get AI solutions to compare your answers to. I don't grade these daily assignments. I just really check off whether you turned them in or not. And I'm only having you turn them in to keep you on schedule so you don't get behind. So every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the sort of early or mid-afternoon, when I put on D2L the video and the notes for the day, I'll also put up the assignment that's due by the end of the day the next time we have class. So like the assignment I give you today will be due by midnight on Wednesday. Okay. And if you can get all or a significant part of the assignment done by the next class period, I think it helps you sort of retain information better. So I would recommend that. But if you can't do it, you have until midnight to get it in and still be on time. Um, oh, and uh, all assignments are going to be submitted online. So you're not going to hand me paper things. You're going to make a PDF. You are going to do it on, pencil and paper, but then you're going to make a PDF of that. And if you have trouble, if you don't know how you are going to make these PDFs, let me know and I can show you how. But and then you're going to submit that PDF into D2L. And then the weekly assignments are similar to the daily assignments, except these are just the ones that I'm going to actually grade. So I'll grade these the same way that I'll grade exams. So it'll give you a little bit of information of what I'm looking for on exams. And it's also just part of your my assessment of your work. These you should not use AI on. This you can work together to make sense out of these problems, but this should be your work that you turn in. And then the vast majority of your grade is going to be based on exams. There are going to be 4 exams. They're all worth the same amount, 17.5% each. Each exam is cumulative. So the best way to get ready for exams is to go back through the daily problems. The people who do best in all my classes are people who don't just do the daily problems when they're assigned, but they're going back through them more than once, and so go back through those daily problems, starting at the beginning all the way through. Make sure you know the steps for each one of these problems. And if you're at the point where you understand the thought process for all of the daily problems assigned up until the exam, then you'll do great on the exam. Okay. There is one little thing about that makes the final a little more valuable than the first 3. And that is if you do better on the final than you did on one of the first 3 exams, the score in your final can replace that first one. So if you get say you get a 60% on exam 2 and you get a 92% on the final, then that 92 counts as your score for the final. And it also, you get a 92 now for exam 2. So it replaces the bad score, and the bad score doesn't affect your grade at all. That is also how I'll do like my version of like a retake exam if you miss an exam. If you let me know ahead of time that you're going to miss an exam, I'd be happy to schedule something. You can take it at the testing center or something. But if you just miss it, then for the time being, it'll stay as 0. But then when you take your final, your score on the final will replace that 0. Okay. The cheating policy, cheating is really almost exclusively about AI now. Don't use AI basically on anything that I'm going to be grading point by point. So the daily assignments, those are really for you just to study. I'm just asking you to turn them in to encourage you to stay on track. But the weekly assignments, the exams, the quizzes, all that kind of stuff, you can't use AI on those. And then everything else on here is stuff that Normandale requires to be on the syllabus. So it's like Normandale information. You can read through these. I think there is some useful information here, but I'm not going to read through it right now. There's the school policy on AI, Normandale Code of Conduct, some information about the OSD office, which is a really useful resource with very helpful people, Title IX statement, stuff like that. Okay, does anyone have any questions about the format of the class or, yes?
As far as like the weekly problems, you want to get feedback on them, that'd be like an office hours thing?
Oh, I will always, so I will mark those up. And there's really two places that you'll be able to get feedback on things. So let me show you. Um, well, one is so I'll use red ink, whatever, on on the thing you turn in. So if you reopen the thing you submitted, it'll say, 5 out of 6 on this problem. This should have been a negative. This should be, the same way it would look on a test or something. And then also sometimes I will put notes if you look at the grades. Um, I don't have anything entered yet, so that's not helpful. But there, under the grades, there's a section that I think it's called notes or something, and I'll sometimes type information in there. So those are the two places once you start getting stuff back and graded that you can look for details about where the grade comes from. And then if something's not clear, you want more details, I'm always happy to talk in office hours or whatever. Any other questions right now?
Are the daily assignments for the following lecture day?
The following lecture day and 11:59 p.m. So and I would recommend that you get as much of it done as you can by the time class goes, because it'll help you understand the next class better. But you can turn it in later that day, and it's still fine. And I'll always take stuff late. I'll have a folder for late work, so if you miss the deadline, you can just put it in the late work, and I'll grade it and stuff. But try to keep that to a minimum as much as you can. Any other questions? Yes.
Are you gonna take points off later?
I don't take points off, but if it gets to be like a habitual thing, then you lose points in that professionalism category. Any other questions? Okay. Well, let me start talking about statics a little and what to expect from this class. By the way, the assignment that I'm going to give you for today is going to be to read a vector review that introduces the notation that we're going to use in this class for vectors, and then you're going to do some vector problems. But I'm not going to talk about that stuff right now. I'll talk about that on Wednesday a bit. All right, so statics is the first engineering class in mechanics. And so mechanics is just like one branch of physics, one branch of engineering. And statics is your second class in mechanics. And so the flow of your mechanics classes throughout your engineering time in school is, so you start with physics 1. And then you go to statics after that. You are here. And then from statics, mechanics kind of goes in two different directions. So over on one side, I'm going to call this side, will it break? And over on this side, I'm going to call this How Will It Move? And on the Will It Break side, the next class you'll take is Deform. We call it Deform here because they call it Deform at the U of Minnesota. Actually, most universities call that Mechanics of Materials. And Deform is where you'll be introduced to the ideas of stress and strain. And then after Deform, if you keep taking, so I think everyone in this class will take Deform. Not everybody will keep going at that point. It sort of depends what your specialization is and stuff. But after Deform, people would take a first class in what's called Continuum Mechanics. It's a really cool name. And this is just sort of more advanced math related to stresses and strains. Stresses and strains you can think of as internal loading and internal deformations in materials. And then there's two ways you can go from continuum mechanics. One is you learn to use finite element analysis. This is a numerical computer approach to calculating stresses and strains. And this is the really practical way to go. Like companies that want stress and strain analysis always use finite elements. There is a more sort of academic, less practical direction you can go, which is just basically more continuum mechanics. It's more mathematical. And it just so happens that one of the, so graduate programs in very advanced continuum mechanics, it's not a super highly sought out field or anything, so there aren't too many that focus on that. The University of Minnesota happens to have one of the preeminent ones in the world, which is kind of cool, but it's a very sort of niche field, that is, even though it's in an engineering department at the University of Minnesota, it's really probably most closely related to math, And then in the other direction from statics, you would take dynamics. And the first dynamics class you take, most of you will take it with me in the spring probably, is in Newtonian mechanics. And Newtonian mechanics means that you're using Newton's laws to do analysis. So you're using the ideas of forces and accelerations and stuff rather than using energy for the most part. And then from there, you can go to more dynamics. And what I'm talking about here is rigid body and particle dynamics. But instead of using a Newtonian approach, that next class you would take in dynamics would use a Lagrangian approach. Which is related to energy methods. And then from dynamics, you also branch out here into fluid dynamics. And fluid dynamics is a whole field unto itself. And, all of these go on after, but this is a pretty good start of where you could go if you just keep taking mechanics classes. And these are most relevant for people in mechanical engineering, civil engineering, aerospace engineering, and certain types of biomedical engineering. But it has relevance to everything. I'll try to point that out a little bit. So what are the kinds of calculations that we're going to get into this semester? So the kinds of calculations we'll do this semester. The first big one is structures. I would say if I had to choose one topic that defined statics, it would be structures. Structures are multiple rigid bodies connected by joints that don't accelerate. So let me just give some random example. So let's say we have this structure like this. And all of these are connected by like hinges or pin joints. And let's say there's a roller here, and let's say there's a force applied like this. Okay. And the question is, what are the external loads applied to each individual member? Okay, well, I think this is sort of a fun thing to learn how to do. So you have this one external load here, but you know that that's applying forces to each of these individual pieces. And up until now, you really haven't had a way to calculate what those are. And we're going to spend a lot of time figuring out, okay, well, so what forces now are being applied to this diagonal member? Are we like, is that force big enough that we're worried about that breaking, or how thick do we have to make it, or something like that? And we're going to spend a lot of time on that. By the way, if you took any of these constraints away, like say you removed the let's see, one thing you could do is say that this part of the floor disappeared and this roller was taken away here. Now it wouldn't be static anymore. You can tell that force would just make it accelerate. It wouldn't, now this thing would basically be the same as it is here if that roller wasn't there, but it wouldn't be called a structure anymore because it would be accelerating. It would be called a linkage. And so when you take dynamics, you'll study the internal forces like that on members in a linkage. Okay, but for now we're just doing ones that are in static equilibrium. Also, another thing so that's what will happen when you get to dynamics. There's another thing that can happen here, and that is if this wasn't a roller, if this was another pin joint, it turns out we wouldn't be able to use the techniques of statics to calculate those forces on the individual members. Because this joint that provided more constraint to this system would make it so that there are more variables that we're trying to solve than there are equations. That would be an example of a system that's statically indeterminate. You can't solve the loads on those members using only statics. You need more. And in deform, we talk about how to deal with that. You have to take the deformations of the bodies into account. But so this is a structure and it's statically determinate. With minor changes, you can turn it into a linkage or turn it into a structure that's statically indeterminate, and those are beyond what we'll do in this class. This structures idea is useful in a lot of applications. One that you might not think of is this idea is used all the time in biomedical engineering, where you model a human skeletal system as a series of rigid bodies connected by joints. And then you do calculations to figure out what the joint forces are, the muscle forces are, how's the body going to accelerate. The second big thing that we're going to spend a lot of time on is internal loads. And so if you have a beam, and let's say that you have a pin joint at the left and a roller in the middle, and you're applying some force like that. What are the forces and couples, what are the loads experienced at a material point, say here inside the beam or here inside the beam? And what can those tell us about how likely this thing is to break? Okay, so we're going to spend some time calculating those internal loads, and that's kind of a necessary precursor to talking about stress and strain when you get to the deform class in the spring. So those are the two biggest topics in this class. Okay, that's all for today. We'll get into some vector stuff on Wednesday. And look on D2L later today for the assignment.